Ready?
Boom.
Boom! Neil, are we live?
We are live.
All right, what show number is tonight?
I don't even know.
500, I'm going to make up a number. It's about 565.
A lot.
Okay, 565 shows.
No, 540 something.
Okay, I was blowing it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to show number, we're not sure, but it's over 540.
Yes.
Okay, 8.5 years in the making.
Microphones?
I noticed we have new microphones. Yeah.
Special deal down there at the Starving Musician.
Nice guys down there.
Guess the price of that microphone you're holding.
I'm going to say this was $17.95.
Doc, how much you think, Doc?
I'd say $5.95.
$5.95.
What do we got?
The price is right.
$10? Right in the middle. So the Off Clip Radio Show.
Great deal, $10.
Hey, Starving Musicians, if you need equipment, see those guys. They're really nice guys down there. And I hope on the podcast, don't worry about you watching on Santa Cruz Waves Facebook page, but you listening on the podcast, I hope we're coming across crystal clear on these new $10 microphones.
$10 microphone should say that.
Well, you know what? I bought a PA from Starving, and it's a great little PA. I've been using it for years. So good little plug for those guys. Tonight, folks, we got a really interesting show. This is something a problem I think many people have, trouble sleeping. And tonight we have Dr. Bill Hart here on the show. 30 years being the expert sleep doc. And I believe you are instructor at Stanford University as well?
Stanford Sleep Center.
Stanford Sleep Center as well.
Yeah.
So the doc's been here 30 years helping people sleep. We got an interesting show tonight. I know personally my wife has a terrible problem sleeping. And
because you snore.
I do snore, and that does not help. But welcome to the show.
Yeah. Glad to be here. Awesome.
Neil had you on our local sports show a while back, and so welcome back to the radio.
All right. It's changed a lot.
Yeah, the radio is the podcast now, and I think anyone listening would agree. The modern radio is a podcast.
Right.
Awesome.
30 years, right? Let's jump right in. Let's get a little bit of your background. Medical school.
So I went to school in Puerto Rico, and then I did my specialty training at Stanford. I did pulmonary critical care and sleep medicine there. So it took me about 12 to 14 years to finish all my schooling, but eventually I finished with my student loans. Yeah.
Oh, I bet that wasn't cheap.
Are they paid off?
Yes, I got paid off. I should have waited for Biden to. Not yet.
Was there a time? Where in your training did you decide I'm going to specialize in sleep?
Well, when I got tired of going to the ICU every night and being grumpy at the nurses at night, and then I knew that I needed to have a different kind of schedule, and I really loved the combination actually of breathing problems and the way the brain works. And so that combination is found in what we call sleep medicine, where we actually understand sleep as a process, something that you would do automatically. And when you can't do it automatically, then it's probably something that you're doing or something that happens to you that stands in the way of you doing this automatic thing called sleep. So that's kind of how we look at it. We look at it as a process, just like you would want to do A to B so that C comes out pretty efficiently. And so that's how we look at things.
Is a lot of what you do would be somewhat of a psychology type situation, or is it more the brain? It's trying to create a pattern so the brain helps you go to sleep.
So we kind of divided it into two phases. Getting to sleep, and that's in the purview of what we can do. Like you can decide when to go to bed. You can decide what your bedroom setup was like. You can decide how much caffeine you drink during the day. But once you fall asleep, it's totally out of your control. And I like to tell people, there's two sides to us. There's the awake side and the sleeping side. When we're asleep, we're unconscious. We don't move the same. We don't respond the same. We're vulnerable. That's probably why we sleep in houses, because we're at risk. And you can see that if you're suddenly thrown out and sleep under a freeway overpass, you're not safe. And so you're not going to sleep first. So much of our work is to understand Sleep in not a rote way. That is, we're coming to understand sleep as a personalized need. That is, your need for sleep is not the same as someone that works nights. Someone that has to get up at 5 to travel to work, 2 hours to commute or whatever. They don't have the same requirements as you, and they can't get the same amount of sleep as you. And so everyone has a certain sleep requirement. And so what we look at is, how can we help you to identify what's working for you or not? So if that works for you, you sleep 4 hours, you take a nap, and you're fully functional, hey, there's nothing we should be doing. But let's say you get an app and decide, well, there's something funky about this app. It's showing that I'm really moving around. You know, my partner is saying I'm really doing something strange. Maybe I should check that out. Maybe we can help you to identify what's working and what's not working. Because again, when you're asleep, you're not aware, because that's what sleep is. And so that's pretty much the second part of it. We're specialists in determining what happens to the unconscious person during sleep. And then we put the two together. If you're having problems getting to sleep, we work on that, and that can be the psychological aspects. You know, training you to figure out, well, what's your circadian rhythm? What's your rhythm? What are you doing that stands in the way of you letting this automatic behavior happen? And then the second part of it is fixing, well, if you do snore is like whistling. You know, that means that your throat is closing. Imagine trying to snore with your mouth open. You don't get a whistle. You have to purse your lips, right? So that means that anyone that snores has a risk of closing their throat enough that they're not getting enough air. Now, does that harm them right away? No. But it's an extra burden on them night after night, year after year. And then often you have to wait until you actually manifest the problem. That is, you are tired or sleepy, you're headachy, you're grumpy, you fall asleep at work, you have high blood pressure, you know, all these different physiological changes occur from that stress of not breathing. And that can happen repetitively.
Did you hear that, Neil?
So snoring is just one of the clues. And, you know, I would say, yes, a lot of people snore, but a lot of people don't snore. You know, and so it's just something that is a clue that we help people to sort out, because we have seen some risks. Finally, I would say, you know, people that can't fall asleep, called insomnia, well, we have some strategies for that. But one of the concerns we have is when people don't breathe at night and they have this risk for so-called sleep apnea. Well, you don't die from insomnia. You're grumpy, you don't function well, but you don't die. But you can die from sleep apnea. You can die from breathing problems during sleep. So that's kind of the difference. And people are always looking for the solution that is easiest and quickest, but it might not be the right way.
Which is a sleeping pill?
Yeah, so sleeping pills are common. Gadgets, you know, something you stick up your nose, something you stick on your nose. So the problem is trying to fix it yourself is hard, because you don't even know how bad it is.
Well, to some people, it's marijuana and champagne.
Yeah, so that helps you to relax, to fall asleep. That's that first phase we're talking about, that it's easy, or not easy, but it's something that you can do yourself, is to fix the first part of sleep, getting to sleep. But again, once you go to sleep, is it really good sleep? Is it really deep sleep? Or are you fighting for something while you're sleeping? And that's what we help parse out for people.
You talk about being unconscious when you're sleeping. But how do dreams? You know, the other day I was having a dream the other night. I literally did a left hook to go hit somebody, and I knocked the lamp over, and my water was on my bed, knocked everything over. I mean, I just big swing left hook.
Jeez.
Yeah,
I could have been unconscious if I was in a boxing match in a dream, right?
Yeah, the problem is there are over 70 types of sleep disorders. So there's at least 70 different kinds of ways that people have disturbed sleep. But in terms of that particular thing you're mentioning, where you're acting out your dreams, well, that may not be very safe for you or a partner, and that might need to be checked out, because it could represent some potential brain or body kind of connection or misconnection we wouldn't know from just that one episode. I mean, certainly people can have nightmares.
Right.
But if it's a repetitive thing, then we really want to check that out.
Better just keep the swinging to a minimum there, buddy.
It was a heck of a left hook.
I'll give you my card afterwards.
Yeah. Well, Neil, after what he just said about
You fix my right hook.
what he just said about snoring, I'm like, oh my gosh,
Right.
I'm really good at it.
Well, yeah.
And Lord, is he good at snoring? Your hand in the air. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. My wife's over here, and I like what I was saying earlier. I usually get a pretty sharp elbow right to my rib cage.
Yeah, that works.
It works. Yeah, it wakes me right up, and I'm always, and then I go, I'm not snoring. People deny that they snore a lot, huh?
Well, first off, you can't measure it. You only know it because your wife has pointed it out to you.
Right.
Because you can only have it if you're unconscious.
Well, I didn't believe her. I was like, I don't snore. Well, she videoed me.
And that is common.
Oh, she did?
Oh, yeah. No, it was scary. I was like a wolf in a den. No, I was like, that's me.
I mean, we do laugh about it. I mean, we laugh at our family and our friends, and we think it's funny. But culturally, it is kind of considered normal. But from a physician standpoint, we don't think it's normal. Because we have people that don't snore.
Right.
We have people that breathe free and easy throughout the night, and they show us that they are sleeping good. So it's a potential stressor that we like to exclude, just like if you were to walk into the office with, a limp. Mm-hmm. We want to find out, well, why are you limping? Because usually you would walk pretty automatically, right? So that's a clue.
And I've learned with my snoring now, since I've discovered I snore, that the more fatigued I am, the more I snore. So like when I have a long, hard physical day, that night I tend to snore the loudest. Or if I'm just completely schnockered on alcohol, I can really roar those nights too.
Well, the important point to consider is we only breathe because of muscles. I mean, our diaphragm is a muscle, our chest is a muscle, our throat is a muscle. So muscle activity is really how we survive. And so if you have a repetitive situation where you're overusing these muscles, let's say, each night over many years, your muscles get tired out. And no matter how much sleep you get, during sleep is when it happens. So you never really fix the problem. You kind of get through it.
Right.
And so it can add up and summate to the point that, sometimes you have more snoring, sometimes you have less snoring, sometimes alcohol worsens it, sometimes international travel can worsen it because you're on a different schedule. Yeah. So there's many things, and it's not a stable target, it's a moving target.
Does it normally progress?
Well, it has a possibility and potential to, because definitely with aging, just by aging, when you were 18, you could probably push a lot of things around, right? And just by aging, our muscle tone is decreasing. So we do see an increased prevalence or increased risks of having sleep apnea as we age. So, and that's when it becomes noticeable to you, is because you're not as energetic as before, potentially, or you're noticing some more new symptoms. So.
What's the top 3 causes of lack of sleep? Not eating correctly, or having your iPhone next to you before you go to bed?
Well, it's probably Starbucks.
Ooh, culprit number
Starbucks.
1.
I wouldn't say Starbucks. But let me retract that Starbucks. No, I love Starbucks. No.
Their lawyers will be calling.
It can be as simple as caffeine. I mean, a lot of people will tell me, oh, yeah, I drink caffeine, and it doesn't stop me from sleeping. But what it may stop you from doing is staying asleep. Either, because now you got to go to the bathroom, maybe it does change your rhythm. The estimation is when you drink caffeine, it moves you 3 time zones. So you're basically living in New York, if you're in California, in terms of time zone, in terms of your rhythm, because it's pushing you later and later. So caffeine is very common. We don't really think a lot about it, but caffeine, for example, here I got a tall would be about 240 milligrams. A venti could be 480. This is kind of old data. And whereas, you make it at home, coffee, maybe it's only 200 milligrams. So you get a very big dosage range that you might not realize.
Is Starbucks secretly getting everyone cracked out on caffeine?
No, I don't know. I just used that because the data was out there. Sorry, Starbucks.
Well, because that seems like a great way to grow a business is get people addicted to your caffeine.
To your product.
Yeah. And getting back to the caffeine, do you consider that to be the number 1 reason some people have a hard time going to sleep?
No, I think as I mentioned to you earlier, it's so individualized that there's not going to be a way to say what is the commonest reason. Probably what we do find is behaviors that interrupt the ability to fall asleep are probably more common, meaning that our theories on insomnia or not falling asleep is there's some sort of potential initiating event, and you somehow perpetuate it. You keep doing it indirectly through your schedule. You do it somehow with caffeine. You do it with trying to compensate for whatever you've done. You try to fix it yourself.
Right.
And so one of the ways that we've been managing it right now is through a behavioral psychological program that works extremely well. It's called CBTI. C stands for cognitive. That is the way the brain works for sleep. B is for behavioral. That is, we change behaviors. We help people understand behaviors that they're doing. And then T is for therapy. That is, you have a relationship with a therapist. And I is an intervention. So basically, it's a cognitive behavioral therapy for people that have chronic insomnia. They can't fall asleep. They try to discover what are the rhythms that could help them to break the chains of what they've been doing, or give them the freedom to experiment in a certain way about their sleep. So that's kind of what we do. So we do that program here. We do that program at Stanford Sleep Center and all, in various locations. So it represents another key part of managing sleep. We're not all about sleep apnea. Everyone thinks we are. We just want to give you a machine. No, we don't. We give you the machine because it works the best, but there are other options, of course, and we are, like I said, trying to do more personalized medicine. That is, we try to adapt it to what you personally will need to get the answers you're looking for. If you have no questions or no answers that you're looking for, you don't need to see us.
Right.
Do we require more sleep? We're getting up there in the years. Do we require?
Well, there's a natural. I'm showing you these kind of patterns. I don't know if you can see this, but there's a natural decay in total amount of sleep. So this is a infant, a child, and you can see as we get older, toward 80, 90 years of age, our brain waves of sleep reduce and our brain waves of waking increase, right? So you start out with a large percentage of sleep, and you've seen that in babies. They're sleeping most of the time. And then the brain develops, and then right in here, you reach puberty, you go to high school, and things are totally shot after that. And then you start to change in terms of the amount of so-called REM sleep and deep sleep. But you can see that it does decrease somewhat over age, and then the percentages kind of change a little bit.
Wow.
I'm going to go to Europe for a second. You go to Italy, you go to Spain, or you go to France. I mean, Italy shuts down, at 2 o'clock for a siesta. Everyone has a siesta. I mean, here, God forbid you shut this.
What is that?
You shut this place down for an hour.
A siesta? You've been taking a nap in the middle of the day.
They're afraid to lose any business, and here the workforce is go, 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 go. Where other parts of the world, you get a chance to take a nap.
Yeah, so getting to sleep is culturally associated. That is what time you eat dinner. When I went to Italy, we didn't eat dinner till like 7, 8, 9 o'clock.
Right.
And that's just the local style. So that has an influence. What time your family is doing activities, dinner, and so forth. So yes, it has a definite influence in terms of locale, in terms of how you set up your sleep time.
I find it so interesting going back to that caffeine that, there's this marketing on television that if you're getting tired in the middle of the afternoon, you should buy this little bottle of pure caffeine and chug it to get yourself back up. And it almost seems like that's just perpetuating the problem.
Well, it certainly is a remedy. I mean, more and more caffeine to get the same effect.
Right.
Because our liver is a very good detoxifying organ. And so caffeine is not a very, and as I showed you on the Starbucks issue or the caffeine issue, it varies so much between doses. I mean, you could get half the amount at home versus, buying it somewhere else.
I was just going to say, I know that you're involved with sleepwalking.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know how common sleepwalking is. I rarely hear about it in my social circles. But to me, it seems very dangerous.
Well, it usually is more in adolescents or teenagers. And usually by the age of 12 to 15, they stop sleepwalking. So it's a break. Yeah. So it's not common to be an adult sleepwalker. Now it can happen, and sometimes we've seen that with certain medications like Ambien. You've heard of some people doing some weird stuff with taking that sleep medication, and it seems to be a breakdown between the control of muscles and sleep. That is, the brain waves are still getting through to the muscles, and then you act out the dream, so to speak. Yeah.
Doc, what happens when you just right before you fall asleep? What does your brain switch off? Your eyes close and your brain switches off. Where's that entry level into sleep?
Well, like I said, it's very individualized. But we think that some key things happen that allow sleep to be that automatic behavior. Number one, we are tied to the planet. When it gets dark and colder, we tend to start to think about a little bit of sleep, right? So dark and cold helps us to sleep. The other is body temperature, the core body temperature, not your surface temperature, but your core shows a decrease. During the day, we defend our body temperature vigorously. That is, we keep it very constant. If we're hot, we sweat. If we're cold, we chill, our muscles move so that we generate some internal heat, but we keep it very constant, except when we go to sleep. So the tip-off is a little drop in body temperature, and then finally melatonin. Melatonin is a natural hormone that keys us in. So those are the setups for this automatic behavior. Now, if you're having a lot of mental activity, planning, anticipation, worry, psychological stress, well, sleep is actually secondary to survival. We need to survive first. So if you have a pressing problem, a need, a question you have to deal with or answer, that's going to come first because we are problem solvers first. Sleep is not primary. Sleep, it comes to us after we kind of fix it and we're safe, and then we kind of have to catch up to what we've been missing in terms of sleep. So.
It seems like stress in my household with my wife. She runs the books of our business, and there's always deadlines with what's going on with our stuff.
Stress.
That's I think her hardest part for her to get to sleep is based on that.
Well, you're never going to get rid of it. We are problem solvers. We solve one problem, another problem pops up, another one. So we're never going to stop needing to solve problems. So it's more like, how do you contain it? How do you partition it? How do you put it aside? And that's where meditation can help. That's where the cognitive behavioral therapy I'm mentioning can help, where you kind of box it. And you're not pushing it away, but you keep it in its location and say, well, I'll address it later.
I've been getting her into hot yoga, Neil. We all do that. That helps me sleep as well as her exercise. But one of the things I did, and I wanted to ask you if you see a correlation with sleep behavior, I bought her one of those beds that goes up in adjustable bed. You can adjust the firmness of it. It has a heater, timed heater in the feet that warm your feet up. It works like dynamite for me. I mean, I'm out cold. I used to flip around a lot in bed. Since I've had this new bed, I can adjust the hardness of the firmness of the mattress. It makes me sleep like a baby. Have you seen that work for other people, and is that a common thing? Because this mattress is amazing. I could have bought a car for what it cost, but it does help me sleep.
Well, whatever tool helps you is the right tool. But can we say a lot of people would benefit by it? It's hard to say. Some people are very sensitive to heat. Some people don't like any pressure on their feet. So it like I said, it's very individualized in terms of what people say is comfortable or not. You really have to go back to childhood, meaning that there is no one way to fall asleep as a child. You might see some children rock. You might see some children suck their thumb, have a toy or comfort. So we learn to comfort ourselves in different ways to fall asleep, and it's very individualized and situational, right? So you have to say that as an adult, you are still practicing ways that you comfort yourself enough to allow this automatic behavior to happen.
Is there a lot that you haven't learned about sleep yet? Are you still learning, or
definitely, all the time. Some of the interesting things is dreams, and there's some interesting work in looking at what they call fast MRI scans, where they can actually take metabolic pictures, chemical pictures of the brain to see what parts of the brain are activated during dreaming, and they can actually predict kind of what you were dreaming about.
Wow.
So there's a lot of technology that's going to be out there for sleep. We're learning, so much about the role of sleep and how it interacts with many bodily functions.
I know you're saying it's individual. One second, Neil. Individual, like how you sleep. But is there a position that you maybe have read research on of how people could sleep better, like on their stomachs, on their side, on their back, or is that individual as well?
Well, if it's specifically to try to avoid something like snoring, it might help a little bit for positioning. But when you look at the dynamics of what's happening, we create suction pressure with every breath. So think of, you're a car guy, so think of when you're trying to get air into the carburetor and there's a floppy tube. And that suction pressure makes that tube collapse. So positioning it to the side or forward or back won't change that collapse. Well, that's kind of what snoring is. There's a collapse of this soft tissue in your throat with a vacuum of breathing. So no matter that you're in an upright or side or even face down position, it might make a little difference, but maybe not enough to be consistent. And that just remains to be seen.
Great analogy, because that collapse will kill the motor.
Yeah, you'll see it.
Also, we talked about dolphin, right?
Dolphins.
I remember that. About half their brain is sleeping and half their brain is awake.
Yeah.
Right? Is that, do we have that too? That luxury?
I've seen you kind of look like that before, even sort of half awake.
Well, no, it just provides a model to say that that the brain can be both asleep and awake at the same time, and that's the model for that. That there, that there's an animal model that shows you that sleep is not always just an on-off switch. That there are parts of the brain that are active and parts of the brain that are not active, and they can, be interchangeable in some way.
Right. I use trazodone. I was diagnosed many moons ago, trazodone, and it helps me sleep, and I still take it to this day.
Years seems to be associated with potential memory loss. And why? Because artificial sleep is happening now. You're using a chemical, it's getting in your brain, and it's shutting down these brain cells. And they're saying, stop doing your activity. And that artificial interruption of the way the brain works may be associated with potential changes in memory over time. So our current push is to try to find other ways, and that's why I'm mentioning this cognitive behavioral therapy methodology, to investigate, is that necessary? Can you do it behaviorally? Just like you'd want to do hot yoga. Why do you want to do hot yoga? You can do other kinds of exercise, right? So you can choose the type of intervention that you want to do, and that's kind of what we do.
Is business booming because of the pandemic? Are people having more sleep problems now than ever?
Probably. The thing is, all of medicine has been shut down like everyone else for the last year here. But certainly a lot of people do have problems getting to sleep and staying asleep, and they're more willing to look at it. One of the interesting things I was telling Neil is that now some people don't have to commute to work. They work from home, and so they get that more hours, but they're still not feeling better, even though they don't have to get up to go commute or, So, and then we do have some people that do feel that being able to sleep longer allows them to feel better. So,
fascinating stuff.
No, it is. Do people who smoke tobacco, are they more susceptible to sleep issues?
So tobacco is a stimulant, and you can relate to that because people can maintain a very lower weight, body weight, if they're smoking, and then when they go off potentially they might have a change and their weight increases. So we think nicotine is a stimulant, and if you smoke right before bedtime, it can activate you, interrupt some of these bodily signals that tell you to go to sleep. So like I said, we often get in our own way of this automatic behavior. But if that works for you, and then that's what you're going to choose to do.
When a patient comes and sees you, is there a big checklist that you sit down and discuss, like how they live, what they eat?
Oh, sure, yeah. I do it the same way we're talking about. I first try to identify, the phase of them going to sleep. What's in their control? How efficiently does it sound like they do it? Do they go to bed regularly? Do they get up regularly? Are they drinking caffeine late at night? Do they drink energy drinks during the day? I try to assess how well are they doing their part. And if there is any, things that are obvious, I point that out to them. Hey, you might want to look at this. But again, once I have figured that out, and then we talk about, well, what is the partner saying for them? Because obviously they can't tell what happened. So we use, secondhand information, not to corroborate it, but just to give us a flavor of what's happening. Another clue will be, do you often get up to go pee at night? Going pee at night is not necessarily because of your bladder or prostate problems or aging. It can be that there's this imbalance of your nervous system from this fight and struggle that is happening each night to you, and you're not realizing it. It could be the other things that we just talked about, prostate, bladder issues, but it might not. And so we do get a lot of referrals from urology after they've been worked up and they have no plumbing issues, so to speak. And we try to help and see is there some functional reason. So the answer to your question, Neil, is yes, we've been very busy.
I bet.
Yeah.
What we eat is important, correct? Obviously what we eat before we go to bed, or I'm going to talk about obesity. Is obesity a problem for, obviously it's a problem in this country. Is it a problem for sleeping?
Not as direct as you would think, because it really it produces a risk factor for you, meaning that it's a potential red flag that says that you might be at risk for something like a breathing problem, snoring. But we actually have some people that are higher up in weight, and they breathe just perfectly fine. So it really isn't that cut and dry. You have a body mass index of 35, you definitely have a problem. Or we have actually people that have a body mass index of 23 to 24. They're very rail thin, and yet they still have a very severe snoring or sleep breathing problem, because it's not related to fat, it's related to anatomy.
Should we be turning off our phones way before we sleep? And, in TC's case, turn off the 90-inch TV. Flat screen.
Yeah, I mean that.
Should we not be watching TV?
Yeah, well that helps. I brought this slide to show you a very interesting phenomenon. That is how melatonin rises and falls through the night. So this is melatonin levels in a person. You can see that it rises toward midnight, and then it falls by early morning. So this is the natural production of melatonin. This is the same person with melatonin going up toward midnight, and right here they shined a really bright light for a number of minutes, and you could see through blood tests that their melatonin levels drop. So this is the work that suggests that we are influenced by light exposures before bed. Now, remember that I said there are a number of triggers or events that need to happen. Your body temperature needs to decrease and so forth, and not only your melatonin. So by itself, it may not be enough to stop you from falling asleep, but it could contribute to it, and that is why often we are making these recommendations to try to limit your screen time before bed. Try to read a book. Go back to turning the page and getting drowsy. Just your eyes moving back and forth can make you kind of drowsy, and just don't read something too stimulating. But that can help you to fall asleep easier if that's your goal.
I'm still counting sheep, Doc.
Do that.
I thought you were going to ask him, is it okay to eat pizza before I go to
bed? I'm on a new diet plan, TC.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yoga.
Okay.
You and I are going to come up with another yoga challenge.
I'm ready. I've been practicing, buddy. I'm ready.
Great.
So, Doc, can you help people who are watching or will be watching down the road to show top 5 things that can help people sleep at night are? what?
Well, I think the top 5 is learning about yourself. And, trying to understand, is my sleep schedule, the way I'm doing things, is it working for me? And how do you know? Well, we have a problem with the definition of sleep to begin with. I mean, our current working definition is it's the amount of sleep that leaves you feeling rested and restored during the daytime hours. So you can see it's really broad. You could sleep 6 hours, and if you feel rested and restored, not really drowsy during the day, and you're active and you have no problem, well, then that sounds like about right for you. But if you are sleeping 8 hours and you wake up and you're not rested and restored, then that could suggest that you're not getting enough hours of sleep. So that's the main crux that I would see, and it isn't I mean, we certainly have, to-do lists, which are basically, the standard thing you can read about, when to go to bed, set a regular time, sleep only as much as you need to feel rested, a regular schedule, avoid forcing sleep, exercise, avoid caffeinated drinks after lunch, no alcohol near bedtime, no nightcaps, avoid smoking before bedtime. I think we've touched on all that of this. Going to bed hungry, well, there was some analogy that, some people will take a spoonful of honey or they'll drink some milk before bed. Maybe they're susceptible to a little bit of low in their blood sugar, and maybe that stimulates them awake. It's really not something that we can really clearly identify. And then a bedroom environment can be useful. So this is more than 5, Neil. Sorry,
that's great.
Bedroom environment, like
which is like TC did. I mean, he's the only person I know who's actually made an attempt to make us sleep better.
No, right. Well, no,
most people don't. We just sleep. We don't think about making us sleep better.
Correct.
Right. We go through the day. We take care of every other issue, but we don't take care of our sleep.
Yeah, and this last one is probably the hardest. Deal with your worries before bedtime. Now, how do you do that? I mean, that is so individual. I mean, your worries are not my worries. And so you really have to figure out, is it enough of your sleep interruption? Is it worth it to be focusing on whatever that issue is? And maybe it is,
I know with my daughter, she has a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
She gets very little
right
sleep.
Away you're not going to sleep until the 2-year-old gets bigger.
Right. It's really tough. So it's she's has reverse psychology warfare every night to get this kid to go to sleep. And then of course he wakes up 3 times during the night and wakes her up completely. Any advice for parents that with young ones on how to help them?
Well, the child doesn't have a problem. The parent has the problem. The parent can't sleep. The child is doing whatever it needs to do to get attention, or there is possibly an issue, but often what we try to relay is that the point it becomes a real problem is when it disturbs the whole family and no one can get some sleep. But the child may be doing something that it needs to do to, not get attention, but has a need.
Right.
And that can be tonsils are large in a child and they're snoring and they have a lot of nasal congestion, they have infection. So there can be a physical reason, but I would say that pediatrics is sleep is not adult sleep. We're not saying that a child is a miniature adult. They have a whole set of different influences and problems and concerns. So we treat each one of these different age groups differently, and as I showed you in the diagram, sleep need is changing, so we take that into account, and so it really is fine-tuned to try to figure out the context of what we're trying to accomplish.
When I was a kid, I had my tonsils taken out, right? They still do that nowadays?
For children, not for adults, because as a child you're very small. I don't know if you were ever very small, but small.
You're on a diet now, though.
But the airway is smaller, so the airway can be small, and so it takes time to grow, and so that's why tonsils and adenoids have a big impact. So in adults, we don't take out tonsils. And I know it's because they're probably regressed.
I would tell you a funny story about that. I had my tonsils taken out in England, and my parents came in, and I was in the hospital, and they came up with a chart. And the doctor at the time goes, well, you know what, your son is very low in iron. He says, I'll be right back. Goes, comes back about 3 minutes later, and has a pint of Guinness. He goes, here, drink that, son.
Only in England?
Yeah. That's a real story.
Drink a pint of Guinness.
Oh, wow.
And after that, it was horrible. I never drank it again. But Guinness has a lot of iron in it, and that's how.
Okay.
That's what they gave me. I'll never forget that. Black as the ace of spades.
Did you sleep good that night?
I slept like a baby. They never forget that.
Well, we used to do bloodletting too. Yeah.
True that.
Leeches.
Interesting thing with my wife sleeping is that, you know, she's a mama bear and she hears a stick crack outside and she jumps up and wide awake. Earplugs seem to really help.
Yeah, so reducing environmental noise, stimulation. You know, I mean, you've seen like some of the basketball players go into these isolation booths, you know, to drown out all the environmental influences so that they can let their body kind of get into that sense of deep sleep potentially, or rest. Yeah. So cutting out environmental noises can be influential. However, we have the other side where people sleep better when they have background noise. They need that white noise to be that hum. It stops their mind from thinking, and they focus on that noise, or it just comforts them. And that's where I told you that comfort has a lot to do with how you set up your style of sleeping.
I grew up listening to KFRC, San Francisco. It was an AM station, 6:10 a.m. I think.
I remember that.
Yeah, and I played music all night from a toddler till a teenager, and that's how I was able to sleep during those times.
Right, but that works for you. It doesn't work for someone else, you know.
Right.
And so it's very individualized, and so that's what we're talking about. And
what you do is very individualized.
we try to. That's
Right.
what we pride ourselves on in our particular sleep center, and you know, we model ourselves after. Where I trained at Stanford, so we model ourselves after the Stanford model.
You know there's a problem sleeping when they built the Capitol. It was a big, huge sleep center right down the street here. You know it's a problem, even in our little town, that they built this, you know, how long has that been there for? 20 years maybe? 50?
Yeah, we're probably going about 10, 12 years.
I mean, obviously they recognize a problem here in our town to build that, you know, sleep center.
And you will have people come there and sleep, and you'll watch them sleep and monitor them.
Yeah, so it's more of is a recording, and I actually related a little bit more mechanistically to like you go to get your smog check done. We put up that, you know, the sensor up at the tailpipe, we collect the gases, we rev the engine, and we match the gas output for the RPMs, right? And so they should correlate very nicely, and that speaks to an efficiency of a process of burning gasoline, you know, and you should do it efficiently without too much off-gassing of other things like, you know, byproducts. So think of sleep in that same way where you're unconscious and now we're not trying to interact with you behaviorally. You know, we actually don't mind if you sleep poorly because we want to see the body's measurements. We want to see how the body transitions into sleep. And we can make these measurements through brain activity. So we put sensors on the brain and we pick up the fine electrical activity of the brain, and we can track it along like an EKG throughout the night and determine basically how efficient your sleep is. Are you having a very good, you know, burn ratio, so to speak, meaning that you're showing lots of sleep and you have no measurable changes in other things that we're measuring. Your oxygen levels, your movement, anything physically we can measure, that's what we try to do. So it's a very laboratory, mechanistic kind of model that we employ for sleep testing. But again, I want to reiterate, that's different than going to sleep. That's all behavioral. And what you had asked me earlier about the mental aspects. So yes, we do both.
Interesting.
You get one more page there, Doc. What is it?
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on smart devices. We get this all the time. This is a very old, you know, slide that I have, but basically it just shows all the different apps that people can now buy, and there's many more. This is probably a couple years old, but basically it speaks to the fact that we are using a lot more apps, technology to track our sleep. You know, and what I would point out is these consumer tools can help you to identify and be a tool for you to identify, is there actually a problem or not? I mean, it gives you some consumer information. Now, they're not designed to be diagnostic or give you that medical diagnosis, because then it would be a medical device, right? Mm-hmm. So, but it can be useful to help you to try to learn about sleep, you know, in terms of what you're doing, what your rhythms are, and it can be helpful in that respect. And I just wanted to point out that it does help us to bring the message forward that you can get involved in your sleep, that you have the tools now with technology to start to get into that conversation. Do I have good sleep or not? Mm-hmm. And if I don't, maybe I want to check into this. And so I have a lot of people showing me their app and showing me, well, I seem to wake up a lot. And my job is to corroborate that, to find out, is that really happening?
I feel like you're a bit of a sleep rehab guy. You know, like sleep rehab, you know? Yeah. And so my question is...
I'm the sleep whisperer.
Yeah, but how many success ratio and like, do you have that kind of correlation of people who come to you and you can make a difference?
I think we make a definite difference. Now, sometimes you just can't change things. For example, the guy getting up at 2 or 3 in the morning to go out in the fields and work, or has to commute, we're not going to change that lack of sleep. And so there's always going to be this absence of sleep that you can't really get back, and their impression of their sleep may always be poor. But what we try to do is make sure that there isn't a physical need that's not being met that could land them with some sort of disability, like problem with their heart or functioning or losing their job. I mean, we haven't even touched on commercial drivers. You know,
right.
Driving a gasoline tanker, or you know, some sort of sensitive job like that. What the DOT and DMV requires. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot in that whole world too. Commercial driving.
Mm-hmm. Stress?
No, not falling asleep while driving.
Oh, not falling asleep, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know some truckers, and they openly say that, you know, they're always pushing it. And to me, that's scary, because we've heard of all the terrible accidents that have happened from people falling asleep behind the wheel.
Well, you have to think, they drive at 2 to 6 a.m. because no one else is on the road, and they get more efficiency in getting to their end, their end goal of getting their product out there, or their truck there.
So if somebody's watching and they say, "Wow, I think I might have a sleep problem,"
yeah.
They go see the doctor. They go see the doc at Sutter.
They should talk to their primary care doctor and just start that discussion. We are a consultative service, so meaning that we depend on our primary doctors to first vet it out, to find out, is it actually necessary, and begin that discussion. And so we assist the primary care doctors in doing that. So we work by referral, because we want to make sure that we keep our primary doctors involved, because that's a long-term relationship.
Right. Thank you, doctor.
Yeah, thanks. And
fascinating show. I love it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's something that we don't discuss ever, but it seems like it's very common.
So integral to our life.
Yeah, and performance and everything associated with your healthy lifestyle.
Yeah, lastly, I would say, I told Neil before that if you have sleep apnea and you're using the machine, your golf scores get better.
They do?
Yeah, there's a study.
Hey, can you get that on Amazon, Neil? Wow. Well, I love that that you're helping people with this, and I love that people who are watching know that their sleep can improve.
All right. Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming on.
Great time.
The doc, the one and only. Ready for some? Are we doing some promotions of our sponsors?
Yeah, I gotta do that, TC.
And can we plug Listening Stack, please?
Yeah. Point that.
I want to thank Justin for my earplugs.
I got mine at home. I gotta try them.
They are the most amazing earplug I've worn in my entire life. I highly recommend them. That Gore-Tex patch is amazing.
Which you've been swimming?
I've been swimming, and I can hear.
You've been working out without me?
Yeah, and it is absolutely the best earplug on the planet. You can wear it all day long. It fits your ear because it's molded to your ear.
Yep.
It fits perfect.
Yep.
And
if Dr. Hetzer has one, he recommended it.
Well,
right?
you know, I was simulating while I was swimming, like smashing the side of my head on the water, like you would falling on while surfing, and no water comes in.
Really? No kidding, really?
It fits so secure. When Justin said, I don't hear problems with them coming out.
Yeah.
They stay in like a champ.
Wow.
So, listening stack.
Full marks.
Full marks.
Full
Go
marks.
see Justin if you have ear problems.
Listening
like
stack.
we both do.
Yeah. ListeningStack.com.
Yes.
Chill Cafe. They sponsor the show. They roll.
The Fatties!
Beach Nest Vacation Rentals. If you want the perfect vacation pad in Santa Cruz, no better folks to call than BeachNest.com. Pizza one and Aptos. Don't tell TC.
Even
TC wanted. I did. I got the large last night, but it's okay.
You should have asked the doc
Stop.
if it's okay to eat pizza before you go to bed.
Next to Manuel's, best pizza in town. Jamie Jens from Santa Cruz Core and Rehab, best place for massage in town too. SantaCruzCore.com. I will be there tomorrow at 10:15. Aloha Island Grill. Thank you, Numa. We gotta get Numa down here. Numa's due for a comeback.
Well, I think we should do a tasting.
He wants to interview you and I.
Oh, perfect.
That's what he wants to do.
If he brings food, I'm on
If he brings food, he's in. If he waveclock.com. Big show next week with Dave Ebert, the shark expert.
Oh man, I can't wait.
And coming down is the one and only Mr. Sean Rovai from Farmers Insurance, who believes that his bull shark ankle bracelet keeps sharks away. Well, we're going to find out next week when Dave Ebert and Sean Rovai are here.
We have not done any research. Do you think it works?
No.
I don't think so either.
Bunch of crap.
So you got to tune in for next week's
show. Who else sponsored it? Christine Peeney, first class realtor with David. Did it all cheap, on time, great service. Thanks, Bill.
You know what? They got to come back tomorrow to clean up that stuff you spilled on the floor last night.
What's stuff I spilled on the floor last night?
When you were dreaming and
that was something. The left hook. A couple more. Mike Gay, owner of the Argus Company for 30 years. Stopped by a meeting there on the corner of Bransford and Water. Best place to buy a used car in town. The ArgusCompany.com. And now they're back. Carried Away Foods, a hidden lunch and dinner spot.